Thank you for joining me for this Summer Solstice Rune reading. I wish you a wonderful solstice or midsummer. I know that in many parts of the world it is celebrated as midsummer. Indeed, in Sweden and Norway, and I believe Estonia and one or two other places, midsummer or Midsummer's Eve is actually a public holiday, coinciding with the summer solstice. I will just share my screen now so that I can show you the runes that came out in this reading. I do wish I had longer arms for this exercise, but there's not much I can do about that. Just make that bigger. Here we are. That up there and we're ready to roll. So, the bottom rune that I chose, I deliberately chose a rune specifically for the solstice rather than any dominant themes that were going on at the time. And as always happens, the rune that came out was completely appropriate. It is Ingvas, also known as Yngvi, often associated with the Norse god Yngvi, Freya, and it is about peace and plenty. It is about happiness. It is about joy of life. It's the kind of energy that I always say we feel, you know, when we want to get up and dance. And there is something about this rune that is encouraging us to do the utmost to enjoy ourselves, which of course is highly appropriate for celebrating midsummer, isn't it? And we do know that there is much going on in our world that we would say we wish could be different, or we wish had been built differently. But we know that holding back on our own joy is not going to change things for those people who cannot experience their own joy at this time. But there is a different way to look at this. Yes, of course, we feel sorrow on their behalf, but another way to look at it is to think about the wave of joy that we can put out in the world. When we celebrate, when we just make the most of the moment in a happy way, and that is a wave, it is a force, it is a power. We know that there have been many studies done on meditation and the effects that it can have, which can include the lowering of crime rates within a city. So when we are sending out or projecting or being joyful, then that is a force that goes out into the world. And maybe we could send some of it out on behalf of those who cannot feel joy at this time because of the circumstances they are living under. We could share a little of ours. We could generate a little more for them, knowing that this is a positive force that somehow, some way, will have a positive influence. Although, of course, we can't just reach in and correct everything. But let's come to the reading. The main reading is the 3 runes that are in the upper portion of the image, and they work together to some extent. There is Erbas, also known as Acre, which is in its upright orientation, which is about working in partnership, which is something we would certainly like to see a little more of in important ways going on in the world at this time, isn't it? Especially when it comes to the resolution of difficulties and better management of conflicts. But this rune does, in a way, extend a promise that progress is coming. Now, as I'm tuning into it, I am feeling that that progress would be July, starting in July, but perhaps not reaching its peak until August, until we're into August. But I'm including it in this reading, which covers the period the 21st of June to the 31st of July, for the simple reason that I see the start of that progress being established quite early in July. I feel ongoing discussions in relation to this that get more into the nitty-gritty, although I do feel that it is a tough process. I feel it is a process that should yield some progress, and I'm certainly crossing my fingers for that. But it is positive from the perspective of working together in a positive way, and that is something that is very much needed. And the rune in the centre, Manas or Malda, which relates to mankind and humanitarian issues. So that is related to what I have already talked about. Then this is pointing towards better things for the future. It is not saying you have to wait until the future to some undefined point for that improvement to be seen. During the period that I've talked about, especially July, but going into August, there is the setting in some aspects, not all, of a better foundation for the future. Because we not only have to think of what has happened, what is happening, but how can this be better in the future? How can it be different? And these are all necessary considerations, as is the management of value and the management of wealth. On the right-hand side, we have fair, also known as fairhu. This speaks of wealth, but to me, it is in a way soft wealth, not the hard wealth of big corporations and big structures, but the soft wealth in everyday lives. In the olden days, this would often be used as an indicator of success in a time when the number of sheep that a person had was a good way of measuring their success. This is about movable wealth. It includes what we have learned, lessons learned. It includes what we have gained. It includes what is important to us for maintaining that wealth, how that wealth maintains itself or sustains itself or feeds on itself is an important question when this rune comes up. But when this rune comes up, there are answers to be found if we want to search for them. So it is an encouraging sign. It is also about looking at the balance of wealth, because when we consider soft wealth, we do that. And hopefully those discussions, those considerations will also extend to those that have the least. That would be my highest hopes for its expression in this reading, particularly as I look at the rune in the centre, speaking of mankind and humanitarian issues, and the rune on the left, speaking of how we can bring things together, how we can come together in a way that is helpful. So I feel encouraged by this reading, even though I know that there are difficult roads to be walked. It doesn't make everything simple, but it does suggest that these issues cannot be put aside anymore. And that is indeed a positive thing. I apologise for any sounds that went on in the background of this reading because these were outside of my control. They were happening in the apartment block. But I wish you a very happy summer solstice or Midsummer's Eve. Apologies for saying midwinter, or Midsummer's Eve, or simply midsummer period if you don't celebrate either. But I know that this should be a good time for many of us, and I wish you all well. I do offer personal readings, and details of those can be found on my website, K Cook Spirit Wings. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you joining me for this reading. And I hope to see you again sometime in the near future. I am also doing monthly readings at the moment, as well as those which coincide time-wise with the 8 points wheel of the year.